Seoul pressed in on the law office from every side, a city of glass and concrete humming beyond sealed windows. Yet inside the room, the air felt old and recycled too many times. The smell of stale coffee clung to the walls, bitter and exhausted, mingling with the faint odor of cheap paper and toner. It was the scent of long hours and lost arguments, of people who came here hoping for miracles and left with compromises. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead, flattening color and warmth, making everything feel slightly unreal, as if this moment were already a memory. Sienna sat across from Director Choi, her posture careful, shoulders tight as though bracing against an invisible weight. At 25, she carried the sharp edge of youth and the quiet panic of someone who had reached the end of her options. Graduate school was barely behind her, its promises already evaporating. Student loan statements waited like ticking clocks, and every unanswered phone call from the hospital tightened her chest. Somewhere beneath the table, her foot tapped once, twice, a nervous rhythm she could not quite control. Director Choi did not rush. He adjusted the stack of papers with deliberate precision, then slid a single document across the polished table. The motion was smooth and practiced, as though he had performed it countless times before. The paper whispered softly as it moved, stopping just within Sienna's reach. Bold letters at the top declared its purpose with bureaucratic confidence: employment contract and NDA. The document looked harmless enough, neat and orderly, belying the gravity of what it demanded. Her eyes traced the dense text until they landed on Clause 4B. The language was clinical and stripped of emotion, yet its meaning struck with brutal clarity. Everything she might imagine, design, or create would belong to Director Choi alone. Her name, her authorship, her public recognition were erased before they could ever exist. The words did not threaten. They simply stated as if this surrender were the most natural thing in the world.
It's a standard contract, Sienna.
Choi's smile spread easily as he spoke, revealing teeth stained yellow from years of nicotine. There was confidence in his expression, the assurance of a man who knew the balance of power favored him completely. He leaned back slightly in his chair, fingers interlaced, watching her reaction with casual interest, as though this were less a negotiation and more a formality waiting to be completed.
You get a salary, I get the Pritzker Prize, everyone wins. Besides, who would hire a foreigner with no connections in Seoul?
The words lingered in the air, sharp and undeniable. Sienna's gaze drifted down to the pen resting near her hand, its black surface catching the light. Then she opened her wallet just enough to glimpse the worn photograph tucked inside. Her father smiled back at her from another time, healthier and unaware. The room seemed to narrow, the distance between pen and paper stretching impossibly long. In that silence, she understood exactly what this choice would cost her. It felt like a transaction far older than the contract itself, a quiet bargain between survival and self. Her chest tightened and her breath grew shallow, as if she were standing at the edge of something irreversible. Ambition, pride, and years of effort lined up behind her, pleading to be spared. But need spoke louder. With a hand that trembled only slightly, she lowered the pen to the page and signed. The sound of the pen was small and almost insignificant, yet it echoed in her mind. Ink flowed, sealing the agreement with casual permanence. In that brief motion, a dream did not explode or shatter. It simply dimmed, quietly, like a light switched off in an empty room.
Welcome to the shadows, Miss Vance.
Choi's voice carried a note of satisfaction as he collected the paper and already moved on. Sienna remained seated for a moment longer, the weight of the decision settling into her bones. Outside, the city continued its relentless pace, unaware that something had been taken, something that would never be returned. The conference room at Arch 1 headquarters seemed to hold its breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Gangnam skyline, but the city beyond felt distant, muted by the sterile glow of recessed lights and the polished chill of steel and glass. The air was heavy with anticipation, the kind that clung to skin and tightened throats. Every executive seated around the long table sat unnaturally still, as if even the smallest movement might fracture the fragile calm and invite disaster. At the head of the table sat Liam Cha. His presence alone reshaped the room, bending its energy toward him like gravity. The gray three-piece suit he wore was flawlessly tailored, radiating a wealth that did not need to announce itself. He did not glance at the glowing presentation screen filled with architectural renderings. Instead, his attention rested on his watch, eyes sharp and expression unreadable, measuring time as if it were a finite resource others were wasting. Director Choi stood near the screen, his tie slightly askew and sweat forming along his temple. He gestured nervously toward the towering holographic image of the Zenith, a skyscraper meant to dazzle investors and dominate the skyline. His voice wavered as he began his explanation, each word rehearsed yet trembling under pressure.
As you can see, CEO Cha, the vertical integration symbolizes.
The sentence never reached its conclusion. Liam interrupted with surgical precision, not loud or theatrical, but absolute, a voice that did not need to rise to command obedience.
It symbolizes ego.
He rose from his chair in one smooth motion and moved toward the scale model at the center of the table. The miniature tower gleamed under the lights, pristine and hollow, a monument to ambition rather than meaning. Liam studied it for a brief moment, his expression hardening.
I asked for a library, a sanctuary, a place for silence. This?
His fingers flicked the plastic model with casual disdain, sending a faint wobble through the structure that felt symbolic of the entire vision.
This is a shopping mall disguised as a monument. It has no soul.
Director Choi stiffened as panic flashed across his face. He stepped forward too quickly, papers clutched in his hands, his authority dissolving under Liam's gaze.
We can revise, we can add more greenery.
Liam adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate control, a gesture of finality. His eyes lifted, cold and assessing, pinning Choi in place.
You have 1 week. Bring me a design that makes me feel something, or I take my $500 million contract to New York.
The words landed like a verdict. Liam turned away from the table and headed toward the exit, without waiting for acknowledgement. As he passed the back of the room, his stride faltered. Near the wall stood Sienna, holding a tray of coffee cups with practiced care, her presence overlooked by everyone else. Liam's gaze, fixed on the sketchbook, pressed against her chest. The worn edges and faint smudges of charcoal caught his attention, and a single confident curve glimpsed on the page sparked something sharp and unexpected in him.
What is that?
Sienna startled and lowered her eyes, her fingers tightening around the tray as if it were an anchor. Coffee, sir. Liam's gaze sharpened, honing in on the truth beneath her deflection.
No, the book?
Director Choi rushed over with forced laughter, eager to erase the moment before it became another problem.
That is just my assistant, Sienna. She sketches doodles. Sienna, give the CEO his coffee and leave.
Sienna nodded obediently, her grip tightening on the sketchbook, as if letting go would mean surrendering a piece of herself. Yes, Director. She moved quickly toward the door, head bowed, and slipped out of the room as it closed softly behind her. Liam watched her departure longer than necessary. A quiet, unfamiliar curiosity tugged at him before he dismissed it and refocused on the memorial he had to build, convincing himself that nothing else mattered. The office, at 2 a.m, felt less like a workplace and more like an abandoned vessel drifting through a dark sea of concrete and glass. The overhead lights were dead, leaving the corner swallowed by shadow, while the city outside pressed its distant glow against the windows like a muted echo of life. Only one small island of light survived. Sienna Vance's desk lamp, casting a tired, yellow halo over scattered papers, cold coffee rings, and a computer screen that glowed with an almost mocking emptiness. Director Choi had left hours earlier, his presence lingering like a bad aftertaste. His voice still rang in Sienna's ears, sharp and dismissive. The words, "fix the design," hurled at her, as if the failure were personal, as if the building's lack of soul were somehow her fault. The elevator doors had closed behind him with a final, metallic certainty, leaving her alone with the silence and the weight of expectations that were never hers to own. Sienna stared at the blank CAD file on her screen, the cursor blinking patiently, rhythmically, like a heartbeat waiting for life to begin. She knew exactly what Liam Cha wanted, even if he himself could not put it into words. She had done her homework in the quiet margins of her life, reading his mother's biography late at night, learning about the woman who wrote poems about storms and believed rain was the sky's way of remembering the earth. This wasn't about height or glass or dominance. It was about memory, about grief, about water and light. Slowly and deliberately, she reached past the mouse and keyboard and picked up a charcoal stick instead. It felt rough and familiar between her fingers, grounding her in a way digital tools never could. She did not draw a skyscraper. She did not chase the skyline or the ego of steel and concrete. Instead, she drew inward and downward. She drew a cavern, hollowed gently from the earth itself, a space that felt protected rather than imposing. On the page, a library began to take shape, carved into stone, its heart open to the sky through a vast glass ceiling. Rainwater pooled and traveled across that surface, bending the light as it fell, casting moving, liquid shadows across shelves of books below. The space felt alive, breathing with every storm, mourning and remembering all at once. In the corner of the page, almost reverently, she named it the Weeping Chamber. Hours dissolved without her noticing. Time lost its edges as her hand moved, charcoal darkening her fingertips until they were stained black and gray, proof of the quiet violence of creation. Her heart poured itself onto the paper with every line, every shadow, every careful suggestion of light. When she finally stopped, the clock read 4 a.m, and exhaustion settled over her like a heavy blanket, mixed with a fragile and dangerous hope. She carried the sketch to Director Choi's desk, the paper trembling slightly in her hands. She placed it neatly on the polished surface, added a small yellow sticky note, and wrote with careful restraint. Concept B. Please review. There was no signature. There never was. Then she turned off her lamp, leaving the office to the darkness once more, and walked out before doubt could catch up to her. Morning arrived without ceremony. Sunlight filtered into the office as Liam Cha returned, his presence commanding even before he spoke. Director Choi greeted him with a beaming smile, holding up a printed sketch proudly, now stamped with his own letterhead, the paper crisp and official, as if ownership could be claimed through ink alone.
CEO Cha, I had a breakthrough last night. I realized you were right. We need depth.
Liam took the drawing from Choi's hands. The moment stretched. His eyes widened almost imperceptibly, and his breath caught as if something unseen had struck him squarely in the chest. It was perfect, painfully so. It was the thing he had been chasing, the shape of a dream he had carried for years, without language. The way the light bent through water, the quiet sorrow embedded in the space, it was poetry made solid. It was beautiful. It hurt.
You drew this?
His gaze never left Choi's face, sharp and searching, like a blade testing for weakness.
Of course. It came to me in a dream.
Liam said nothing at first. He traced the lines of the drawing with his finger, slow and deliberate, following the curves and shadows as if memorizing them. Then he nodded once, decisively.
It's magnificent. I want to meet the team who will build this. I want to work closely with the lead architect. That would be me.
Choi bowed deeply, satisfaction flickering across his face. In the corner of the room, Sienna stood quietly, holding a pitcher of water against her chest like a shield. She watched as her work, her nights, her memories, her soul was claimed by another man without hesitation. She did not cry. Experience had taught her how useless tears could be in rooms like this. She had learned how to swallow loss whole. Then Liam's gaze shifted. It landed on her almost by accident and then sharpened. He noticed her fingers first, stained gray with charcoal, the marks still fresh and undeniable. His eyes flicked back to Choi's hands, manicured, clean, untouched by creation. Something clicked. Liam Cha was a businessman. He had built empires by reading people as carefully as contracts. He narrowed his eyes, the smallest gesture carrying quiet authority.
Director Choi, I have a condition. I want to set up a temporary office here to oversee the project daily. Daily?
The color drained from Choi's face.
Yes, I want to watch the process.
His gaze returned to Sienna, cool and assessing, but now edged with something else.
And I'll need a liaison. Your assistant, Miss Vance?
Me? She looked up, startled, the pitcher trembling slightly in her hands.
Yeah, you make excellent coffee. You're hired as my point of contact.
For an entire week, the glass office became a silent observatory. Light poured through its transparent walls, refracting the city into shards of motion and steel. And inside that prism, Liam sat still, disciplined and attentive. The office hummed with the faint breath of climate control and the distant murmur of a department in motion. From his seat, he watched patterns emerge: who arrived early, who lingered late, and who carried the weight of decisions in the slope of their shoulders. Watching was not passive for him. It was a method, a way of understanding power by observing who truly wielded it. He watched Choi play golf in his office, the soft thud of a putter striking practice balls echoing faintly through glass and carpet. The game unfolded as a performance with relaxed swings, indulgent laughter, and the confidence of someone insulated from consequence. The green mat was immaculate, untouched by dust, a private luxury carved out of corporate time. Liam noted the contrast between the leisurely rhythm of the game and the restless energy bleeding in from the corridor, where real work moved with urgency and purpose. And then there was Sienna. He watched her run the entire department without ceremony or applause. Engineers clustered around her desk like planets around a steady sun, firing questions that would have stalled lesser minds. She answered without hesitation, fingers flying across tablets, eyes scanning schematics as if they were second languages she had been born speaking. Materials were chosen with precision, trade-offs weighed in seconds, and when structural load issues surfaced, she dismantled them calmly, rebuilding solutions from first principles. Brilliance lived in her efficiency. Exhaustion lived in the shadows beneath her eyes.
Miss Vance.
His voice cut through the rhythm of the office, controlled and measured, carrying just enough authority to still the air. The summons was simple, but it shifted the gravity of the room. Chairs stopped rolling and conversations dipped. Sienna lifted her head as if surfacing from deep water and turned toward the glass office. She entered with the quiet determination of someone already behind schedule. Fatigue clung to her like a second skin. Her hair was a riot of curls that had long ago surrendered to the day. A lone pencil trapped among them as a practical afterthought. The black turtleneck she wore was unadorned and functional, a uniform chosen for invisibility rather than flair. She stood straight, despite the weight pressing on her spine. Yes, CEO Cha?
Sit.
He gestured to the chair opposite his desk and slid a small, elegant box across the polished surface. The box itself was a statement, cream-colored, embossed, and unmistakably expensive. It displaced the usual artifacts of contracts and reports, inserting something human into the corporate geometry of the room.
Eat. Your blood sugar is low. I can hear your stomach growling from here.
Color rose to her cheeks, deepening the rich tone of her skin into a warm, luminous cocoa. Embarrassment and surprise flickered across her face, emotions she usually kept locked away. The room felt suddenly too quiet, every small sound magnified by glass and expectation. "I'm fine, sir."
Eat.
The command was gentle but immovable. She opened the box and selected a pistachio macaron, its shell a soft green promise. As she took a bite, the delicate crunch gave way to sweetness. Liam watched, not intrusively, but with an attention that surprised even himself. A strange satisfaction settled in his chest, as if restoring balance were an act of ownership or care he had not known he sought.
Tell me about the glass ceiling in the library design. Why did Choi choose tempered laminated glass?
She swallowed, and something in her shifted. Fatigue receded, replaced by a spark that ignited behind her eyes. The question unlocked a door she kept bolted in professional spaces, and without realizing it, she stepped through. Because of the acoustics. When the rain hits tempered glass, it is a drum. But laminated glass is a whisper. It creates a sound like white noise. It mimics the sound of a womb. It is meant to be comforting. Her hands moved as she spoke, shaping invisible curves and tracing imagined raindrops and sound waves through the air. Passion animated her features, lifting her posture and giving rhythm to her words. Liam watched closely. The technical specifications dissolved into the background. He listened instead to cadence, conviction, and the unmistakable resonance of someone speaking from the core of who they were. In that moment, clarity struck him with the force of inevitability. It was not Choi's vision that animated the building, it was hers. She was the architect, whether acknowledged or not.
You love this building.
The softness in his voice startled her. She froze, awareness crashing back in. Realization tightened her shoulders as the mask she wore slammed down into place, sealing away vulnerability with practiced speed. "I just memorized Director Choi's notes. He is a genius."
Is he?
He leaned forward, the movement deliberate, narrowing the space between them. His gaze sharpened, curiosity edged with challenge.
Because he asked me yesterday if the water would leak. The architect should not ask that. The assistant seems to know more.
Panic flickered. She pushed back her chair and stood too quickly, the legs scraping softly against the floor, a small violence of sound betraying her haste. "I have to go. I have to file permits."
Sienna.
He said her name, and it lingered in the air, balanced between inquiry and vow. The single word carried weight, suggesting paths not yet taken.
Why do you hide?
"I'm not hiding. I'm working." Her voice dropped to a whisper, and then she was gone, retreating through the glass door with quick, decisive steps. Liam remained where he was, watching her departure reflected and refracted by the walls around him. After a beat, he reached for his phone, the decision already made.
Investigate Sienna Vance. Find out why a genius is serving coffee.
The construction site was alive in a raw, elemental way, stripped of all pretense by the weather. Heavy machinery stood idle like sleeping beasts, their metal frames slick and darkened by relentless rain. The ground had been torn open only hours before, fresh earth exposed to the sky, and the rain punished it without mercy. Water pooled in uneven craters, turning soil into a sucking, treacherous mire. The air smelled of wet concrete, iron, and the sharp mineral tang of newly broken ground, as if the city itself had been cut open. The rain did not simply fall, it roared. It hammered down with a steady, unforgiving force, blurring the skyline into a gray smear. Hard hats glistened, Reflective vests clung to bodies, and every sound merged into a single, overwhelming chorus. This was not a gentle afternoon shower. It was a storm that demanded respect and erased comfort, leaving only truth behind. Choi was nowhere to be seen, his absence hanging over the site like an unanswered question. With him gone, responsibility shifted abruptly onto Sienna's shoulders. There was no time to argue or hesitate, and she stepped into the role she had always been prepared for, but rarely allowed to claim. Sienna led the site tour as Liam walked beside her, mud clinging to their boots with every step. Rain streamed from their hard hats as she moved with purpose, her eyes scanning the land not as it was, but as it would be. The foundation will go here. She planted her foot firmly and gestured toward an open stretch of ground where rainwater collected in rippling pools, her arm tracing invisible lines only she could see. We need to dig deep to hit the bedrock. As she stepped forward, the ground shifted beneath her. Her boot slid backward, balance vanished, and gravity claimed her in a sudden, terrifying fall. Strong arms caught her mid-descent as Liam reacted on instinct, wrapping an arm around her waist and pulling her back against his chest. They stood frozen together in the rain, bodies pressed close as water streamed from their helmets. The forgotten umbrella lay abandoned in the mud at their feet.
Are you okay?
His voice softened with concern, and his grip tightened slightly, as if letting go were suddenly unthinkable. I'm muddy. Embarrassment and heat rushed through her as her hands hovered uncertainly between pushing away and holding on.
I don't care.
He lifted his hand and brushed a smudge of mud from her cheek, the lingering touch carrying an intimacy that made her breath catch.
Sienna, you are the most real thing I have found in this city.
She looked up at him, stunned by the certainty and devotion in his eyes, her heart pounding violently in her chest. We should go inside.
No, I know it's you.
What?
I know you designed it. I checked your background. Top of your class at Cornell. Winner of the Young Architect Award in 2019. Then silence. Why do you let him steal your light?
Because he owns my name. I signed an NDA. If I claim credit, he sues me for millions. I support my parents. I cannot afford a lawsuit. I'm trapped, Liam. I'm a ghost.
A ghost? Then I will be the exorcist. I will set you free.
He wrapped his coat around her shoulders, shielding her from the rain and the cold.
Get in the car. We are done here.
The Cha Estates boardroom, 1 week later, was no longer just a corporate meeting space. It had been transformed into a stage. Floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the hard, midday light. Cameras clustered like metallic insects along the walls, and the low hum of whispered conversations filled the air. This was not an impulsive confrontation. Liam had planned every detail with the patience of a strategist who understood that power meant nothing without evidence. He had not fired Choi immediately because rage was sloppy. Proof, on the other hand, was lethal. The so-called Live Design Challenge had been announced as a celebration of transparency and innovation, the final creative push for the library interior. Press badges flashed. Investors sat straighter in their seats, eyes sharp with expectation. The invitation list had been deliberate, journalists hungry for spectacle, financiers obsessed with reassurance, and at the center of it all, Choi himself, confident and unaware that the room had already been arranged as a trap.
Director Choi, there has been a change. The site geology is unstable. We need to redesign the support pillars right now. Live, to reassure the investors.
The words landed with surgical precision. Liam's tone was calm, almost courteous, but beneath it ran a current of challenge that could not be ignored. The cameras zoomed in. This was no longer a meeting. It was a test conducted under unforgiving light, where hesitation would be magnified and confidence would either stand or collapse.
Right now, but I need my drafting software.
A bead of sweat formed at Choi's temple and slid downward, betraying the panic he struggled to mask. His fingers flexed uselessly at his sides, as though searching for a keyboard that did not exist. The investors exchanged quick glances that carried silent questions about competence and credibility. In this room, excuses sounded dangerously close to confessions.
Here is a whiteboard. You are a genius or not you? Show us.
The marker looked absurdly small in Choi's hand as he approached the whiteboard. His posture stiffened, shoulders tight, and breath shallow. He raised the marker, paused, then dragged a single, uncertain line across the pristine surface. He erased it almost immediately. A circle followed, uneven and hesitant. It was the kind of drawing stripped of authority, more suited to a nervous child than the celebrated director of a major firm. A low murmur rippled through the investors, a sound made not of outrage, but of disappointment. Reputation, once cracked, made a very specific noise as it fractured. Choi swallowed hard, his face draining of color as he became acutely aware of every camera trained on his failure.
I am not feeling well.
The excuse hung in the air, thin and fragile. It did nothing to stem the tide of doubt. In the back of the room, Sienna Vance watched silently, her pulse loud in her ears. This was the moment she had imagined in fragments and nightmares, yet now that it was unfolding, time seemed to slow, each second stretching with unbearable clarity.
Perhaps your assistant can help, Miss Vance?
All eyes turned. Sienna felt the weight of the room settle on her shoulders, heavy but clarifying. She met Liam's gaze from across the boardroom, searching for doubt or hesitation. Instead, she found only certainty. His slight nod carried a single, silent message to trust him. She stepped forward. Each footfall echoed louder than it should have. When she reached the board, she gently took the marker from Choi's trembling hand. There was no triumph in the gesture, only inevitability. She did not pause or second-guess. The whiteboard became alive beneath her movements. Lines appeared with confidence, angles precise, measurements annotated, and forces balanced with elegant logic. She sketched a complex cantilever system in minutes, her mind moving faster than the marker could keep up. As she explained the physics, her voice was steady and resonant, cutting through the earlier murmurs. This was not performance. This was mastery made visible. Applause erupted, sudden and overwhelming, filling the boardroom with sound and motion. Investors stood. Cameras flashed. Choi remained frozen, his expression twisting toward nausea as the truth took shape in front of him, undeniable and public. Liam stepped up to the microphone as the applause faded into expectant silence. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Authority settled around him like armor.
It seems that the talent in Arch 1 resides entirely in the hands of Miss Vance.
He turned to Choi, the movement deliberate and final.
I am canceling my contract with Arch 1. I am suing you for fraud, and...
From his pocket, Liam produced a document, the paper crisp and the implications devastating.
I bought your debt. What does this detector? No.
Choi's eyes bulged as the last remnants of control slipped away and the room seemed to tilt beneath him.
I bought the bank loan you used to start your firm. I own your debt, and I am calling it in, unless...
Liam smiled then, a slow and predatory curve of the lips that carried no warmth.
Unless you release Miss Vance from her NDA and admit publicly that she designed the library.
Choi looked at the investors, their faces hard with fury. He saw the end of his career reflected back at him, the years of stolen credit collapsing into this single, merciless moment. His shoulders sagged as defeat claimed him completely.
She did it. She did it all.
Flashbulbs exploded like distant lightning, capturing the confession from every angle. In that blinding storm of light and truth, the ghost was no longer a rumor. It was seen. The balcony of Liam's penthouse hovered above the city like the prow of a ship cutting through light. Glass and steel framed a skyline alive with movement, traffic threading veins of gold through the streets, windows blinking like constellations. Sienna stood barefoot against the cool stone tiles, the night air brushing her skin with a gentle, liberating chill. In her hand, the champagne glass caught the city's glow, bubbles rising endlessly, mirroring the sudden, unstoppable ascent of her own life. Freedom settled over her not as a shout, but as a quiet, trembling realization. For the first time in years, there was no shadow following her name, no fear of being erased. Her phone lay abandoned on the table behind her, lighting up again and again with notifications she no longer needed to read to understand. The ghost architect pulsed across the world, no longer a secret, no longer a ghost. Offers poured in like rain after a drought, and with each one, the walls she had built around herself cracked a little more. The door behind her opened softly, the sound almost lost to the wind. Liam stepped onto the balcony, the sharp lines of his suit relaxed now, his tie loosened as if even it had surrendered to the gravity of the moment. He paused for half a breath, watching her silhouette against the city, as though committing the image to memory. Then he moved closer, the space between them filling with warmth.
How does it feel?
His voice carried curiosity, but also something deeper: anticipation, pride, maybe even awe. Sienna turned, the tension finally breaking into laughter that bubbled up as freely as the champagne. Terrifying. I have to start my own firm now. The words tasted unreal as she said them, as if speaking them aloud might shatter the moment. Liam stepped beside her, resting his hands lightly on the balcony rail, sharing the same horizon.
I have a suggestion for the name.
He said it casually, but his eyes never left her face. Oh?
Vance and Shaw.
Sienna's eyebrow lifted, a familiar spark of challenge and amusement lighting her expression. Shaw? You're a developer, not an architect. Liam turned fully toward her now, the city reflected in his eyes, but his focus absolute.
I'm an investor, and I want to invest in you.
The night seemed to hold its breath as he reached into his pocket. The movement was deliberate and unhurried, as though he wanted her to see every second of what came next. He drew out a small box, its weight insignificant compared to the meaning it carried.
I told you I wanted a library, a sanctuary.
He opened the box. Inside, the diamond ring caught the city lights and fractured them into quiet brilliance. It was not ostentatious or designed to impress strangers. It was precise, elegant, and structural, like a perfect design that needed nothing added or taken away.
You built the library, but you also built something else. You built a home in my heart. It was empty before you. Now it's full.
The words landed slowly, each one settling into her chest with undeniable weight. Sienna's breath caught, the city blurring for a moment as memories surged from late nights, stolen glances, and the first sketch that had changed everything. Liam, we've known each other for a month. He did not flinch. His certainty was steady and grounded.
I knew the moment I saw the sketch. I fell in love with your mind before I even heard your voice. And then I met you, and I fell in love with your strength, your resilience.
He did not kneel. There was no performance or submission. He stood exactly where he was, meeting her gaze at the same height, offering not devotion alone, but partnership. Two forces choosing alignment.
Be my partner, Sienna, in business, in life. Build a world with me.
Sienna looked down at the ring, its clean lines reflecting the woman she had fought to become. She saw the years spent in silence, the stolen credit, and the fear of being invisible forever. Then she looked back at Liam, the man who had named her, claimed her brilliance, and pulled her into the light without asking her to dim herself. I have one condition. Her voice was steady now.
Anything.
I design the house. And you make the coffee. Liam's laughter rang out across the balcony, rich and unrestrained, echoing off glass and steel. It was the sound of a man who had already won everything that mattered.
Deal.
He slid the ring onto her finger, the fit perfect, as if it had always belonged there. When he kissed her, it was not hesitant or fragile. It was a kiss that spoke of blueprints and foundations, of futures built deliberately, of concrete and steel, but also warmth, trust, and two hearts choosing without doubt to build together. 1 year later, the Cha Memorial Library stood completed beneath the city, hidden from the skyline yet impossible to ignore. It unfolded underground like a secret revealed only to those willing to descend, a vast cathedral carved from patience, intention, and memory. Light poured down through the glass ceiling in wide, luminous sheets, refracted by rainwater and steel, scattering across endless shelves of books. Stone, wood, and glass breathed together in quiet harmony, as if the building itself were alive, listening, and finally at peace. Outside, the rain fell steadily, not in anger, but in reassurance. Each drop struck the glass ceiling above with a soft insistence, creating a layered rhythm that echoed through the open space below. It was exactly as Sienna had once imagined it during long nights of drafting and doubt, a whisper rather than a roar, a sound that wrapped itself around the body like a blanket. The rain did not intrude. It belonged here, completing the architecture instead of challenging it. At the podium stood Sienna, her presence grounding the vastness around her. Pregnancy softened her silhouette, her hand instinctively resting on the curve of her belly as if anchoring herself to the life growing inside. The crowd before her was hushed, drawn not only by the building, but by the woman who had shaped it with equal measures of brilliance and vulnerability. When she spoke, her voice carried easily, warmed by the acoustics she had designed herself.
Architecture is not about buildings. It is about shelter. It is about creating a space where you can be yourself.
As her words settled into the air, Sienna's gaze shifted toward the front row. There, amid donors, scholars, and dignitaries, sat Liam. He held a sleeping baby against his chest, one arm curved protectively, his posture relaxed in a way that spoke of sleepless nights and earned happiness. The child's breath rose and fell in quiet rhythm, unaware of the moment, unaware of the legacy surrounding them. Liam looked up just as Sienna found him. He winked, quick, private, unmistakably his. In that single gesture lived 1,000 shared memories, battles fought, risks taken, losses endured, and victories that had come at a cost. The formality of the event dissolved between them, replaced by something intimate and unshakable. Sienna smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and softened the weight of the years behind her. She returned her attention to the audience, but her voice now carried something more personal, something earned rather than taught.
And sometimes it is about finding the person who makes you feel like you are home.
Applause followed, filling the cavernous space, but Sienna barely registered it. She stepped down from the podium, the echo of her footsteps slow and deliberate. Liam was already standing when she reached him, careful not to wake the baby as he shifted his weight, his attention entirely on her.
Ready to go?
Sienna exhaled, the adrenaline of the moment finally releasing its grip. She nodded slightly, rolling her shoulders as if the building itself had settled onto them.
Yes, my feet hurt.
Liam's smile widened, a familiar mix of devotion and mischief. Without hesitation, he stepped closer, adjusting his stance as if the decision had been made long before the words were spoken.
I will carry you.
Sienna laughed under her breath, glancing instinctively toward the cameras, the crowd, the public gaze she knew so well.
Liam, there are cameras.
He did not slow or reconsider. Instead, he bent and lifted her smoothly into his arms, bridal style, as if this too were part of the architecture, an act of balance, trust, and strength.
Let them see that the architect belongs to me.
Cradled against him, Sienna reached up, her fingers brushing his jaw before she leaned in.
And the CEO belongs to me.
She kissed his cheek, soft and unguarded. The cameras captured it, the crowd murmured, but none of it mattered. What mattered was the way they moved together toward the exit. Liam steady beneath her weight, Sienna relaxed in his arms. They stepped out into the rain as one, the sound rising to greet them. Water traced the glass above and the stone beneath their feet, blurring the boundary between inside and out. Under the shelter they had built together, of steel, of glass, of love earned through fire. They walked forward, carrying their future with them, leaving the ghosts of the past behind them forever.